Here we are into the first days of 2023, and a happy new year to you. So I started this series of videos about nutrition and running, but before I post the next one, I thought I should give you some context in the info that I'll be sharing. In this world of everyone being an expert on social media, we've got to remember that before social media, we all still had opinions that were shared with those of us around us. And those opinions were usually based on our experience or, the experience of someone that we know or read about. And social media has just dramatically increased the number of people that we can reach. Before we give our opinion on something, do we really need a piece of paper that qualifies us to communicate an idea or opinion? Of course not. But if we want to state something as fact, we should be able to substantiate that claim. Our own experience can certainly help someone else benefit from what we know, right? We share recipes, places to visit, movies to watch, people to follow on social media, etc. And that reminds me of a post that I saw from a runner who was giving advice to runners on a huge Facebook running group. And it was of her experience in a race and how to handle it better next time. And one person criticized her for having only achieved a 2-hour 35 half marathon as her best time. And how could anyone take her advice seriously? Really? But what was so good to see was the reaction from commenters on this particular runner's advice, because it resonated with so many of them. Runners who were at the same level, who had been there themselves. Those people were more than likely couldn't relate to this troll who thought that only qualified people could give advice. I studied electrical engineering at university, and I continued for another 2 years part-time post-grad that earned me a master's degree, which I did to improve my job prospects. But this has nothing to do with what I know about nutrition and running coaching at an amateur level. Yet it has everything to do with it. If it wasn't for my experiences at university, I would not have been coached by an Olympic level of coaches. I wouldn't have heard about the early stages of sports science. I actually wanted to switch degrees, but I was so far down the electrical engineering road, it was impractical. So what am I telling you? Why am I telling you about this? How and where we learn and how we are employed to use that knowledge, and I don't necessarily mean getting a job, should not be solely focused on around a piece of paper that says what we're qualified to do. Obviously, we want properly qualified and experienced cardiac specialist when we're in the throes of a heart attack. But it's a paramedic who's on the scene first who's most likely to make the difference whether we make it or not. A paramedic's not a doctor or a cardiac specialist, but they are the specialists in responding to emergencies. All these highly qualified professions require their registered practitioners to keep up to date with the latest developments in their fields. And in general, it's acknowledged that studying, like reading books, papers, attending seminars, etc., should just be a lifelong pursuit. So back to my university days. And so that I can get back to why I'm interested in nutrition and sports. Back in the late 70s, there was very little established sports science. And what we did to get better was based on tried and tested conventional wisdom on training methods that was passed down from successful coaches. And those coaches would tweak and fine-tune things to see what worked best. Sports science without a degree, I would say. Those methods haven't really changed that much, except these days there's much better understanding of what happens inside our bodies as a result of training, overtraining, or even being malnourished for the training. The big change has been in nutrition and the ubiquitous availability of data. The impact of nutrition only really shifted into the mainstream in the last 10 years, based off research that was started way back in the late 70s, 1970s and the early 80s, and that eventually exploded in the 2000s. My early exposure to the intense exercise, both as a conscript in the army when I left school, and later while rowing at university made me realize that our bodies can do far, far more than we ever thought possible, so long as you could get over the mental blockages that held us back. I love challenging my personal limits, but after finishing my undergrad, I didn't train with a coach again, as my pursuit was really just purely recreational, and I didn't think about it much. I started training just like we'd learnt in rowing, and had some mediocre success in cycling and later in running. But I was always reading and studying new ideas and trying them out. The turning point for me came in a nutrition seminar, meeting someone who not only studied sports science back in those early days, but was involved with an ongoing practical research. I learned the simple foundations of sports nutrition as a whole, and it applied to anybody at any level, and it changed the outcome of my recreational sports completely and almost overnight. I was completely blown away by the profound effect the simple nutrition formula had on my running performance. Everyone said, as you get older, you just have to accept that you get slower. No, that's not been my experience. I remember an 8K running time trial we used to do as part of a rowing team. My times back then were between 33 and 34 minutes. I was able to run those sort of times in my late 50s now, and even in my early 60s, because I applied what I learned about nutrition for the last 21 years. What we know today is that by doing strength exercise and paying attention to nutrition, the loss of muscle mass and strength as we age can be slowed, if not stopped and reversed. So going back to learning, I listen to podcasts from experts. I often read research papers when they're published publicly, and they're freely available on the internet. And anyone can get access to this, even on a tiny device that I'm recording this on, like called a cell phone. My videos are an attempt at explaining what I've learned and experienced about approaching exercise from a nutrition first principle, rather than trying to achieve an outcome through the exercise in isolation, such as focusing on a marathon training plan and ignoring the need to fuel your body correctly, not just on the day, but throughout the training program. So it's my hope that when you put nutrition first, you will go to a whole new level of performance. My commitment to everyone who works with me is that as long as you don't give up on yourself, I'll be there to coach you through the hard times and rejoice with you through the good times. So thanks for listening to me, and please leave a comment about how you got started in your favorite sport and where you are now, and if you're open to it, what you hope to achieve in 2023. Thanks again.